Yeah, so the way I look at some of these caloric restriction experiments and the intermittent fasting is that essentially what they are periods of and ketosis, belongs in this I think space as well. They're period. I mean, ketosis, when you look at it from a mammalian physiology standpoint, is a signal or a state in which you are in a essentially a fuel deprived state. So you're trying to mobilize stores the whole time, and that's how it's used. It's also a state, and then intermittent fasting and caloric restriction, where it's the system gets tightened up from a metabolic standpoint. So it becomes very efficient at disposing of potentially damaged or oxidized or whatever process you want to name there, misfolded proteins, and autophagy gets upregulated. So and I say to people, they're like, yeah, this autophagy. I'm like, yep, it's known about it for a while. It's not like it does happen. It's going on all the time. Protein turnover happens. If autophagy is blocked, terrible, bad disease, like not good. I'm like, oh, really? I was like, yeah. So it's, yeah. But anyway, so all of these things sort of get tuned up, if you like, and you become very efficient at getting rid of damage. Or in sort of lowering the level of growth factors, if that's the right way to say it, and mobilizing fuel stores. So, I think from a human standpoint, if you can there's lots of data to suggest that, that the way that we eat now, people say, I joke with my students, they say, I'm starving. I'm like, no, you're not. You're hungry. But you have to not eat for 24 hours to sort of be starved. And they're like, oh my God, 24 hours. And I'm like, yeah, like, that's, and as if that's sort of some hardship when, you look at the way that we run our lives. And I think, there's something from a biological standpoint that would say it's probably not a bad idea to do that if you're a human being. Every now and again to I think feel what it's like to not have food, because that's what a lot of people live with. And then as well from a metabolic standpoint, where it just tightens up the system and the system gets pretty good at removing the garbage, if you like, taking out the garbage. And from that standpoint, then you can, that's sort of how I view those intermittent fasting or caloric restriction type experiments, as a way of making the system metabolically tight and getting rid of damaged proteins, efficiently removing and turning over proteins. But that's also what a lot of exercise does as well, is increasing the flux through the pathway. And so they're not dissimilar from that standpoint, although, a little bit different. And so, to me, if you can manage to fit those into your scheme and you can tolerate it, and it's not so much of a hardship that it tips you over the edge. I do also think, though, there's a point at which too much of that, so caloric restriction and longer lived animals in cages is impressive to me. How about you bring them out and have them have a disuse event or expose them to a little pathogen, and so have them live like real people.
Right.
And I don't think they do very well. So
yeah, is there a mice equivalent to like falls?
no, there's not. And that's the whole point. I mean, human beings we do pretty well under stressful environments until there's an external stressor that we don't have essentially the capacity, or in this case, I'll call it reserve, a big part of which is your muscle, to support other processes like immune function during this time of stress. And it's those stressful events in an older person's life that are true watershed events. So you have a surgery, you get treated for cancer, et cetera, where you have a little dip. And, when you're young, that dip, and you recover. When you're older, you don't come back. You've got to fight really, really hard to get it back. And these animals in cages, they just, they're protected from all of that stuff, and they might live longer. But I'm fond of saying, and who wants to live to be 120 and feel 120? I have no interest in that at all. So I'd like to, get to wherever I'm going to get to, and then just drop right off the edge, so to speak.
I agree. My new slogan is "Get old slowly, die fast." So
Yes. I
that's
know
the goal.
it sounds horrible, right? But I do. There is something. Yeah, I run a center where the average age of people that come to the center, it's a community access program, is about 72. We have a guy in the center he's my poster child. He's 102, and
Oh my gosh.
I still come. So during the pandemic, we've had to shut it down and everything. So, but people there talk about somebody will pass away, and they just say they went to sleep and they never woke up, and everybody goes, "Awesome,
I'm
that's
jealous.
go." Like and it's just death is a part of life, and they see that as that's a life well lived, and a if you like a good way to die.
Totally. I've been inside old age nursing homes, and that is not where I want to spend my last years of life.
Yeah, it's yeah, yeah. Probably enough said on that topic.